Welcome back to the Professional Lovers Channel. I'm Al.
And I'm Patty, and we are the Professional Lovers. And we're glad that you're back. If you are a subscriber, then you know that we've been married for 27 years, together 28 years, that we facilitated relationships for married couples, engaged couples, and I think we've done a pretty good job with that.
I think so too.
We consider ourselves counselors or experts. That's why we say facilitators. So if you're looking to get some tips that will help you create the best relationship you can have, we think that you can get some of that here. True. And we share those tips from the book, Becoming a Professional Lover. And we talk about relationship issues through the lens of Married at First Sight. So that's why you're here. So let's get started. Like us, share us, subscribe to us. And we're going to start with Brianna and Vincent, who have been vibing for the last 6 weeks and hit a little bump tonight. And it's funny.
The last 6 minutes.
And it's funny that it happened right after Pastor Cal's visit,
where he gave them some insight on however comfortable and pleasant things have been, expect some speed bumps.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
And then it happened.
Yeah.
Because respect is very huge for Vincent.
Respect is very huge for men.
Yes, very typically it is very huge for men. But what that means and what it looks like, would you say is different from man to man? Are there some general characteristics of respect that all men want?
There's everybody's different. Right. And I believe in Vincent's case, there's been some history where respect has been a crux in his crawl because he has felt hurt. And I think at times in his life, in just my opinion, I think at times in his life growing up, he's been made fun of. And he's been the brunt of jokes. And that's not something that it just totally rubs him wrong. And in this case, Brianna made a couple of little remarks that could have been cute. Literally.
She thought that she was joking.
Yeah, but he didn't take it that way, unfortunately.
And even I said it was going too far.
Because it was kind of back to back to
exactly.
back. Yeah.
And if a person is very sensitive, the way Vincent appears to be, then he was taking all of those back to back to back as being disrespectful. And also people can say things jokingly.
Yeah. Not understanding how they're being received.
But not really joking.
True.
Because we know that she's a neat freak. We know that she likes things a certain way. We know that she...
But she also knows, and again, I'm not saying that she should have known better because she saw where he lived, how he lived.
Right.
He was fairly neat.
She was surprised.
Even surprised.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, for her to kind of have little digs, even jokingly, back to back to back, in an instant, it appeared that he seemed like he got shot a couple of times, because he didn't let it go, and he let it build, even if it only took a few minutes. He did not address it when it came. If there was a question, ask.
Well, he also did what is typical with new couples, and that is, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Anything the matter? No, I'm fine. And we do that because you don't
want conflict. You don't want to deal with the unpleasantries.
Right. And you also are, I think, you're scared to be vulnerable to conflict because it's new. You don't know where each other's limits are.
True.
You don't know how each other is going to react and handle things. So that's very uncomfortable. Yeah. You're still in the honeymoon phase and you want everything to be lovey-dovey and I love you, just the way you are.
Well,
But not really though.
Yeah.
I mean, because it took us a minute after even being our ages and being more mature. It took us a minute to figure out the best way to communicate in handling and resolving conflict.
And actually, it took one day.
No, it was more than that.
I'm not saying that we took a day and made it perfect.
Okay,
but I'm just saying it was the encounter of that one day where we just went to the opposite ends of our apartment and didn't deal with each other for a day and was like, that's not how, evidently that's not how you deal with conflict.
I have to say, I remember that a little differently. As in, that was not the only time that we handled it that way.
No, yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about.
But that was, to me, that was the extreme, to the point where however we were doing it was not the way we needed to do it.
We fought silently for quite a while.
Yeah, we're not arguers and yellers.
But that's how we handled conflict. We did not talk to each other unless we needed to. And we did not...
But we didn't talk about the issues at the time.
Right. I mean, if you asked me a question, I answered it. If I asked you a question, you answered it. We weren't, nasty, name callers, that kind of thing. But it did take at least a year for us to decide that even that was not an appropriate way to handle conflict, of not speaking.
No.
And then we talked about, okay, we can't do this anymore. This is dumb.
Right.
So I'm just saying, it was more than that just one time.
No.
But the bottom line is, every couple has to get to that point. Now, what did he do wrong?
What Vincent did is, whenever there's conflict, which especially in the beginning of a relationship, when things are uncomfortable, one of the worst things to do to ever try to give any type of confidence to a relationship, or to your significant other,
or to create a safe space for dealing with conflict,
the worst situation is to flight.
Yeah.
You don't leave the situation and allow a person who is evidently in a state of confusion anyway to their own resources to think about what may or may not have happened, because they don't have a clue, because you're not helping out the situation. You're just avoiding the situation. You're not confronting the situation. So you're not even allowing yourselves to get to a point to discuss what could or could not have happened to ensure that we don't get to this space again.
Now, granted, there are some people who are not quick thinkers, and they don't, they need time to process their reaction and their response. But you still don't leave the apartment or the house. You can go to another room if that's what you need to do to calm down or to collect your thoughts. But you don't leave the actual residence of where you and your spouse live.
That was a little extreme.
Because that's like people who say, well, then maybe we just need to get a divorce. And they use divorce as a tactic. And a tool.
You go past it being an option. It's a tactic.
It's a tactic, because you're not really wanting a divorce.
Right.
And he should not have left. Now, she is going to have to understand what respect looks like to him. In his eyes. And he is going to have to learn how to manage his response.
Yeah.
Because that's not what he did, as we said, is he did not create a safe place for any difficult conversation. Exactly. And when you don't create a safe space, then you're very hesitant to have those kind of conversations. And one tip we would bring out before we move on says that unresolved anger and resentment will destroy a marriage. Yeah. And that's what happens when you do that flight thing. Yeah. You leave it hanging there, and the more that it just hangs there, and the longer it hangs there and hangs there, the harder it is.
It becomes the elephant that you have to address at one time or another, but don't let it get so big that you can't handle it.
Right. Right. All right. Virginia and Eric. Well, Eric has picked up more and more. He said it last week that Virginia really doesn't understand. She doesn't know what a married relationship looks like.
Yeah. Because she thinks she's just back home and she's ready to hang out again and do all these things that she's accustomed to doing, and she'll come home to him and he'll be there, and
or not.
Yeah, because he's working. So
or because she's crashed on her guy friend's couch, and her husband's at home wondering where she is.
No,
and for you to text me is asking too much.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that constitutes respect, and letting your spouse know your whereabouts, not because they need to keep tabs on you.
That's not the point.
But to understand that you want to make them feel comfortable knowing where you are in the case that you may need them for whatever reason. Not that they need to know where you're at all the time.
And the more that you're together, you know what each other's routines are.
Right.
And if your spouse goes outside of the routine and says, and doesn't get home when he would normally or she would normally come home from work, then it does kind of leave you wondering, okay, what's going on? Not again, because I need to know your whereabouts. I just need to know you're safe. So it is a respect thing. And I'm glad that Pastor Cal let her know that you don't bring your single living life into marriage and act like you can just still live that way.
Really.
That's not appropriate. And she's going to learn.
She will. One way or another.
She will learn. When she inferred that he wanted her to ask him if she could go with her friends. Yeah. I'm not sure what that conversation actually looked like.
Yeah, how it took place. But basically, it was just informative. Girlfriends are hanging out. Mind if I go? Because who knows? He may have had some plans.
And that's the thing. Again, you have to consider your partner.
Exactly.
And to just say, hey, I'm going out with the girls. Bye. That's not appropriate. That's not considerate.
True.
And you're trying to be considerate of your partner. Always. As you want your partner to be considerate of you. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see how they work that out.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that she's got cats and he's allergic to cats, and he has to take medication for that.
Yeah.
But I've known other couples who had that issue before, where one was allergic to animals and took medication in order to cope.
Really?
Yeah. That's some real love right there, though.
Yeah.
Because you can't. He can't force her to give up the cats.
Yeah.
Hopefully, she'll end up doing it if
it becomes an issue.
If it becomes a real health issue.
Yeah.
Let's see. And we had a tip for them. And that is, let me find the page. Oneness in harmony, not sameness, holds a marriage together.
Yeah.
They're going to have to get on the same page.
Yeah. You don't have to be identical. You don't have to mirror each other's whatever. But there still has to be an understanding. There still has to be a unification. I mean, a parallel of sorts, Yeah.
Yeah. All righty then. So our favorite, very dysfunctional couple, Paige and Chris. Okay.
Please.
There's not really too much to say about this because once Paige found out at the airport in Nevada that he had a separate ticket going to Chicago, she should have gotten back home to Atlanta and gone to her own place and said, you know what? We're need to figure this all out. Leave me out of it until you come to your conclusion.
Yeah.
Instead, She went to the apartment that they were supposed to share by herself. He comes home some days later after visiting with his ex to let Paige know that he wants a divorce. Now, the only thing that I can say about their situation tonight is I was a little annoyed that Pastor Cal did not plainly tell Chris about himself the way that he was telling Paige about Chris. I mean, when Paige was saying some of the things that Chris was saying in her ear, Pastor Cal said that's BS.
Yeah.
And it was. Now, we wanted to see everything play out from last week before, several of you said that you thought Chris's apologies were BS and trash and all that.
And you were correct.
And you were right. But we needed to be able to see it all play out before we gave opinions.
Right.
And tonight he proved it. It was all trash and BS.
It's worse than trash. To take someone's feelings and their life
and keep manipulating them like that,
and just hold it in your hand and just carry it around with you, and put it on a shelf somewhere, so you go ahead and do what you want to do, and then you come back and do whatever it is that's in your mind to make it, to put a smile on her face or whatever the case may be. And I appreciate Paige's willingness to commit to the process, but you don't sacrifice yourself. You don't sacrifice your dignity.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, you have done a yeoman's effort in trying to give the benefit of the doubt and be available and be supportive in every way you possibly can without knowing what the situation is and it just being thrust upon you. At that point, just like Patty said, you just step away from it. You just step away from it. You don't even have to give an explanation for anything, because you have been justified in doing whatever you choose to do, because we've all seen it.
And I agree with, being committed to the process, but then there comes a time when being committed to the process is self-abuse. Yeah. Where it's too much. It's overboard.
True.
And I think it went overboard.
It's borderline desperate.
Yeah, and Paige never really answered Pastor Cal's question as to why did she continue to have sex with Chris, even after everything that kept happening. And for me, that suggests that there's something that Paige was getting from that connection that she needed. Because again, that starts to borderline on being abusive. And then every time Chris turned on the charm to affirm her or to say something to her to make her feel good about herself, she's waffling. And that's nothing more than manipulation, because he has shown himself to be completely self-centered from day one. Yeah. And he goes against the principle that says, as a husband, now remember, these are two very spiritual people who are trying to live biblically. So we're going to pull out the Bible on you. This says, as a husband, make Ephesians 5:25-29 your daily goal, which basically just says that a husband should treat and love his wife the way Christ loves the church and gave himself for the church. Okay? Which means that, and real quick, it means you should seek for your wife the same comfort that you seek for yourself in any given situation.
And I don't believe he gave her comfort at any situation.
At any time from day one. Yeah. It's all been about Chris's comfort.
Yeah, his confusion.
So, Time to walk Paige for real, regardless of what he says. Okay?
Although we know you're going to agree to something different, at least for a minute. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so the next couple is Clara and Ryan, who didn't really have too many issues tonight.
No, well, Ryan is taking it slow. He's deliberate. He's a very calculated individual. Clara, she's been out there.
She's being patient.
Yeah. But now she understands that this is a different relationship. There's a different meaning behind this. There's no more searching and wondering, where can it lead? It's where it's going to be. Now, how do we make it all that we can be? Because now, we've gone to the mountaintop.
Well,
we're married.
Yeah.
We're married in that sense of relationships.
Yeah. But Pastor Cal helped Ryan understand that he's already made a commitment, which is an intelligent commitment, which is the precursor to love, because love is not a feeling. You don't fall into it. No. And if you
decide,
if you've heard us before, you know that you've heard this from us before. Yeah. You don't fall into love. It's not a feeling that you turn on and off. It's an intelligent decision to be committed to a person. Yeah. So Ryan has already stated that. Yeah. So he may not use the L word, but he's demonstrating characteristics of the L word. Okay. One thing though that I thought was interesting when they were talking about like going to bed and the fact that he goes to bed at 10 or 10:30 and she goes to bed at 1, and she's like, well,
sound familiar?
Yeah. and that's why I wanted to talk about it for a minute, because it seems that there are a lot of couples, especially women, who feel like you and their spouse and he or she
need to do things together.
It should go to bed at the same time. Yeah. And I find that interesting. Now, I understand in a new marriage, going to bed at the same time doesn't mean going to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, yes, after you have your fun, then you want to spoon and you want to cuddle. And so I get that. But the requirement that we have to go to bed at the same time, that would never have worked for us, because I am an early to bed person because I wake up early.
And I'm a native New Yorker. I feel like I'm going to miss something if I go to bed early.
Yeah. And so I think you have to give each other some leeway with, I'm not your mom. True. And so to be requiring for you to go to bed when I go to bed, and I have heard women say, "Oh, this is no negotiation.
You've heard
if
that
I'm going to bed, you're going to bed."
Yeah.
Okay, come on now.
Not.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's just you can come to some agreement as to when you have bedroom activity. Yeah. But it doesn't require that you go to bed at the same time. So I just thought that was interesting. Yeah. And we'll see how they work that difference out. Our last couple, Haley and Jacob, they ended their honeymoon with a tiff. Yeah. They sat in different places on the plane. Mm-hmm. They didn't talk much. No. Because he ended up accusing her of having a boyfriend back home, which he knew had no clue whether or not that was true. And of course it wasn't true. No. And accused her of lying, which he really felt she did. Mm-hmm. And again, we missed some of that last week because our satellite was messing up, bad weather and all. Yeah. But from his perspective, it did sound like she told a white lie. Yeah. If you want to call it, but a lie is a lie. It's a lie. Anyway, but it triggered him.
Something in him, definitely.
Well, he told Pastor Cal he has been in situations before where he was being cheated on. And so things that Haley said triggered his feeling that he was in that same situation. And this is what this shows you, though. We get triggered all the time by past experiences, how we grew up, and all of that. I mean, we have as well.
True. Everybody has.
Everybody gets triggered. And that's what makes the whole listening so important. And not jumping to conclusions and assumptions.
True.
When you do that, then you create a worse situation than you probably have.
Right.
So they, she's pulling away, and he did apologize.
Yeah.
And they did try to start patching things up.
And I mean, they're amicable. There's a comfort with each other. They're not threatened by each other in any way. Although
she's threatened by them 80s.
My boy is a little stuck.
It's a bit much. But then why not? He only had himself.
True.
He can do whatever he wants to. He can have neon plastered all around his house, which he basically does.
But that's 30 years ago.
I'm just saying.
The boy had a members only jacket. Now, you had to be from the 80s to understand the significance of that.
And what she say?
And she said, well, I wasn't there.
What is that? What's the big deal behind a members only? What does that mean?
It was the name of a jacket. I mean, it was like, it's like
didn't know.
It's like a woman saying, I still got my Gloria Vanderbilt jeans.
And you're like, what?
What?
Or Jordache.
Hey.
I got my Jordaches.
Woo.
Who? Michael Jordan?
No. But
the age difference, oh my goodness.
Yes.
But you know what? As I said during the show, I don't think she's not into him.
Yeah.
And I don't think she wants to be into him. She's committed to the process, but not the process with him.
Yeah. And I can feel that she just is not one to be committed to climb that mountain, because again, there's a transition that he's going to have to go through to come up to the 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean,
not just the 2000s. We're in the 2020s.
Right. But I'm just saying, I mean.
And he comes across as a little unyielding.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you were scared for her at one point.
Because I felt that she was a little intimidated because, again, soft-spoken people that take up a little space.
And who don't like confrontation.
And who don't like confrontation. They tend to be a little bit more intimidating because under normal circumstances, people let go. They become a little vocal, boisterous, whatever the case. And he's a big dude, And at one point, he raised his hands up, not at her, but as he was walking by her, he got in front of her, he raised her hands up. He raised his hands up, and she stopped walking behind him. And I just felt from a male to female perspective that was just an awkward,
was it threatening?
Physical. Well, to a certain degree, it's almost like a peacock that throws out his feathers. All of a sudden, you just get a little overwhelmed by, what the demonstration. Because it's not something that you're accustomed to seeing. So
especially while you're getting accused. And
then he even used a little vulgarity and used a profane word or two. And I mean, I hadn't heard that from him prior to that, so it was like he was expressing his
triggers.
Well, his intensity behind how he was feeling.
Yeah.
But I think it caught her a little off. And again, you got cameras there, so you don't think that anything's going to happen. But
I didn't get the sense that anything was going to happen.
I didn't think anything was going to happen. I just felt that was just an instance of true insecurity. Who is this guy?
Well, now we know why he was so insecure.
Yeah.
And
history.
History.
Somebody else's history.
Right.
which we all have. We all have our history. It's
We
part of
call
what
it
makes
baggage.
Yeah, exactly. It's what's made us who we are today for whatever reasons. Our triggers, our defenses, our preferences. All of those things are part of the character that we have formulated through our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, you picked out this tip for them. That you should be different enough to enrich each other.
Yeah.
And she could definitely enrich him by bringing him into the 2020s.
True.
And he could enrich her by the experiences that he has had and learned from because of the age difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he can bring certain security to her.
Right.
Because she's been very independent.
I saw you looking like, what can he bring to her?
Well,
how are you going to
because
spin this for him to bring something to her?
Believe it or not, I really thought that Haley was a little more mature than she actually is, and that was just, I think, from her appearance. She had a very
and how
mature,
she handles herself.
Yeah. But when it got into reality and in communication, her inexperience in relationships and just kind of expressing, how you feel or just being honest and forthright, just like the situation from last week where she wanted to be with the girls for a little while. And she made up an excuse that that's what it was, where basically it appeared
she wanted to be away
just
from
wanted
him.
to be away from him,
Yeah.
So be honest. I need to breathe. I need a break.
Well, Pastor Cal let him know you need to get out the 80s because that's a bit much. Yeah, yes, exactly. Your affinity is extreme,
mm-hmm.
and you need to relax that.
Nostalgia a bit. Is one thing. Being stuck isn't altogether different.
Absolutely. Anymore. And she needs to bring the walls down.
Yeah.
Because she's definitely got them up and hiding behind them.
Yeah.
So.
But they're smiling.
Right now they're smiling, but that one dog needs to be taken to board somewhere until they can get him acclimated to the other 3 dogs who seem to be doing okay.
No, he was one of the 3.
The other 3, there are 4. Remember?
Yeah, there's 4. Right.
And
he has 3 of them.
The other 3 seem to be doing okay.
Yeah.
He, on the other hand, has some trigger issues.
Yeah.
That they're gonna have to help him figure out.
And I'm sure they will.
They need a Caesar. The dog whisperer.
The whisperer.
Yeah. Anyway. But there we are. Those are our couples for tonight. And next week, again, Chris and Paige looks like a doozy. I don't even want to talk about it right now. We'll just wait until next week.
There you go.
Until then, stay safe.
Please.
And we will check you out next week when we come back together. Same time, same channel. Peace.
Enjoy.